Okay.
Hey, Dr. Rob.
Good evening, Tammy.
Oh,
The sun is setting in Southern California. Nice to see you.
nice to see you. So the first question we have is, I've recently suffered with lots of self-judgments, guilt, and shame. I've been on 2 months from recovery. I haven't told my partner yet about my sex addiction. I'm not afraid she would not be supportive, but I'm afraid I would mess up again. Therefore, I do not feel even more guilty about it. Therefore I would feel even more guilty. I'm so sorry. What should I do? So do you get the gist of it, or should I?
I do. And
I
I think that every relationship at different points come to a place where you have to go deeper. And to build something meaningful, you've got to get more real. And, I guess my favorite story about this is the Velveteen Rabbit, which is, basically the theme of it is, if you're looking perfect and you want your partner to see you as perfect, you're not ever really going to be real. It's only when you're scuffed up and broken and, sort of in there making mistakes like the rest of us, and your love for it anyway, that you begin to see the outlines of who you are in relationship to other people. So, yeah, not to be too philosophical, but intimacy is defined by being known more fully. And if you want to be more intimate with this woman or man, you're going to have to let them in, knowing that they're going to be hurt and they're going to be angry and they're going to be in a different place, and it's going to rock the relationship. I guess what I just want to say to you most of all is, I just want you to understand that when you tell this person this, it's not what you're telling them that's going to rock their world. It's what you did. Telling them simply makes them an equal. It makes them a partner. What you did is what you have to clean up, not the fact that you're telling them. In fact, I would reward you for telling them, because I think if they find out on their own, it's a whole lot worse. And I know this from experience. So anyway, that's my answer to that one. Tammy, do you have thoughts about that?
I think you're exactly right. And, there's like, people call it the day of discovery, because they find out and it's so traumatizing. So, having the ability to set it up so that this person's in a supportive, and you can share, and share, here's what I'm doing, here's my problem,
right,
here's what I'm doing about it, rather than you did what, because they found out, is traumatic for them, and also erodes any sense of trust that you've been building over the time you've been together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next question. How do I process extreme guilt for setting boundaries with my NPD spouse? His attitude has changed from a brick wall to a broken soul. I don't know if that is just a tactic or real.
So I'm not sure exactly how to respond to this, Tammy. Can you maybe reinterpret this as you understand it?
I think this person is seeing the brokenness and is trying to decide if that's trustworthy. If somebody has this emotion of like, I'm a brick wall, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, that's disconcerting. And is that really truthful, or how do I support this, or should I support it? Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, thank you so much for clarifying that. I think that the ticket, and this is the hard part, is to be where things are now. Which means if this person seems real and emotional and open, well, be supportive. You don't have to give your heart to it. You can just be kind. Like, I'm sorry you're having a hard time. It seems like you're really working on this. I'm proud of you for that. Doesn't mean you forgive him. Doesn't mean you care about him, but you can be proud of him for work. And then if the next day he's a jerk, then you treat him like someone who's being a jerk. You kind of have to take it one day at a time. And unfortunately, and Tammy probably will back me up here, not that you have to, but in case you think about it, a lot of times we make mistakes in recovery. Our recovery is rocky. Some days we're emotionally available, and then for a week we shut down. And part of that is actually the way it works. Like, we open up and then we kind of get scared, and, it's just not a straight ahead process. And I'm not saying trust the lies in the moment or the truth, but trust what you're seeing in the moment emotionally. Unless this person has a really big reason for wanting to pull one over on you, it's probably just what he's going through. You might as well respect it.
And one thing I noticed, there isn't sharing what he's doing about it. So if he's getting qualified support, is he going to 12-step? What is he doing?
Right.
We talk all the time, Dr. Rob, about you guys can't be the only source of support for each other. And so if he's looking for you to fix this brokenness, you're betrayed, that doesn't, you set up
not your job.
yeah, for a good thing. So, you know, and I don't know how long, this has been going on, but, it isn't like you stop doing the acting out behavior and all of a sudden now I'm well and I'm all put together. The acting out is just a symptom. So all those underlying issues are now coming to the surface while you're trying not to act out. And I mean, it's a hot mess.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's a hot mess at first. And then, so like you said early on, it's like, it's a process, and, it's just how it is. So this week I might be doing a little better, and next week I might be just like, a complete jerk.
And I think, by the way, Tammy, to add all that, and this is not with, oh, can you hold on one second? I have to open a door. But
oh, yeah.
I'll be right back. Keep
Okay.
entertaining the groups, Tammy. Okay.
So I'll go back to what I was saying about getting qualified support and making sure that they're, and I love Dr. Rob's books. Don't get me wrong. I think all of those are great foundational material. But if you're doing this work and you're doing Sex Addiction 101 and you're doing the Sex Addiction 101 workbook, now
sorry about that.
That's okay. Now stuff is coming up. What do you do with it? So getting qualified help to help support that is really key.
Yeah, I think, Tammy, just based on what you're saying before, it's not that I would expect an addict might come to their partner when they're struggling with the addiction. In fact, we might want to hide it. And we might want to play up the emotional part because we want you to see that we're really moved and working on ourselves. But, I think your job is to be kind and pleasant and, take the person where they are and, one day at a time. That's really all you can do.
And get support for you.
But don't assume, but don't, so here's a good thing. Sorry, we're never going to get past this question, but inside that question, there's a question, which is, how do I begin trusting? How do I begin to know, what are the signs? Because partners really want to see that signal. And I think that you've seen one, which is, it's kind of like a map. You saw one point on the map. You saw this emotional guy you haven't seen in a while or ever. What else are you seeing? Like Tammy said, are you seeing a guy who's going to therapy? Are you seeing a guy who's getting support from other men? Are you seeing a guy who's going to workshops or taking care of himself in personal growth? Or, so you just have one data point, you can trust it, but one data point isn't enough of anything. It's what happens. So my statement about trust, right? Trust equals behavior acted out over time or something like that. So you got to give it some time. I wouldn't read anything more into it than just seems like he had an emotional moment. I wish him well.
So the next question, I'm working on step 8 and 9. So I'm sorting out who I'd make direct amends and who I'd make indirect. When it comes to men, I'm a hetero female and SLAA. Many of my exes were, the typical unavailable alpha male narcissist types. Making direct amends seems like an unwise idea. What guidance do you have for step 9 in terms of direct or indirect amends?
So I think there is in the whole discussion amends, it's wherever possible. And there's also something about not hurting the other person and not doing something that might hurt the other person. Sorry, Tammy.
I was going to say you disappeared.
Well, here's the thing. This sweater is so great, and I want to make, anyway, it's okay. It's all a visual here. I want to make, it's hard to get my glass. Anyway, I'm trying to get the whole thing right. It's probably not important. And
so
now
making direct amends,
right,
whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others.
Yeah, I just, I'll tell you, why don't you start, since that went through me, and I will continue.
Okay, so in my experience, people presented themselves in the time that was, I didn't have to go looking for a bunch of people. And like, it was uncanny. I would bump into somebody in a certain place, very organic, and I would have the opportunity. And I remember standing there with my hands sweating, going like, okay, you can do this. And it worked out beautifully. I was always in a public place, and all I had to do was take responsibility for my stuff. That said, reaching out to them directly is probably not in your best interest or theirs, or whatever. And so being willing was a lot of it for me.
And I'll jump on that because it brings up the idea of what we call a living amends, which is, there are people that I harmed that I may never meet. I harmed someone's wife or someone's husband, or some kid didn't get picked up by their partner because I was with them, or, I'm never going to know all the people that I harmed, but I did. So part of the healing process is to pay it forward, and if you will, to try to do things that are useful and helpful for other people, to help other people's families, to help other people's kids, in whatever way that might work for you in your community or your world, to give some of your time back to families so that they are less hurt, to children so they feel more connected and supported. And if you can do that, then it really is kind of a way of paying off the debt, the karmic debt, if you will, because you are willing to move yourself forward and try to help others. And that's really what the whole thing's about.
And the other thing that was really interesting to me when I worked with my sponsor, some of the people that I would have thought I owed an amends, I really did. Like when they started dissecting it, it was like, so I believe you've made a great list. Make sure that you've really gone through it with your appropriate people to figure that out. But yeah, I love.
You see me smiling, Tammy?
Yeah.
Do you know why I'm smiling? This is not good, because I remember making an amends back in my 30s to someone, and I said something like, I feel really badly for all the sex that we had, and the other person was like, I don't feel bad about it at all. Yep. And it was like, oh, sorry, but it was still the right thing for me to do, right? Because I felt that I'd interrupted something or harmed, but you never quite know what's going to come back.
Yes. Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, next one. I've been listening to Sex Addiction Podcast, read Out of the Doghouse, and watched more TED Talks than I can remember. As a sex addict, I feel like a fuck up who has experienced trauma, but inflicted much more. Do you ever use positive psychology to accentuate the positives the addict have to the betrayed and to the addict? I know, I was like, the same thing.
I didn't think that there was an overemphasis on the negative here, so I'd have to reevaluate that. I think that every step we take for me, every take I step toward owning how I've hurt someone else or taking responsibility for being a better person, that kind of pain is like good pain. I grow, and I think the process is about growing and becoming a more healthy and integrated person. And sometimes we have to look at a lot of parts of ourselves that we would rather not like looking at. And as a matter of fact, this is actually one of the benefits of having a recovering person as a friend. They are sort of required. We are required in our day-to-day activities to not lie to people, to not let people down, to not, we have to evaluate ourselves on a constant basis. So what may feel to you like constant shaming could be, let's say, maybe 25% of that is an opportunity to grow. And the rest is just kind of stuff you shouldn't pay as much attention to because maybe you're taking it too personally or you're letting it mean too much. But I think a lot of the recovery process has to be about feeling better about yourself, not just feeling bad. And if everything you do in your recovery leaves you feeling worse or more ashamed, then to me that's a therapy issue or maybe a psychiatric issue, a depression issue. I don't know, but yeah, it's hard times and it's tough, but we get through the learning and growing, holding the hands of other people who are going through the same process as we are. And so in that way, shame can be turned to grace because it's in the community of all this shame that we feel forgiven, if you will, so and supported. So I think it's a hard road. And if you're not used to feeling a lot of pain or you're not used to looking at yourself or you're someone who like me, so used to being in control, it can be hard to say, wow, I guess I didn't have it all together like I thought I did. But what a great chance to grow, as long as you don't turn it against yourself. Because if every one of your lessons becomes another reason to hate yourself, then you're not growing. You're just in a puddle of self-hatred. And that's really all about you. They have lots of words for this. Some people in the 12-step programs, they call it the pity pot. Is that correct, Tammy? You're my 12-step expert.
Yeah.
But in my world, we call it sort of unbridled narcissism. And that's not the kind of narcissism which is, woo, look at me, look at my fancy car and my great world. And you see all these amazing things around me, so you think I'm amazing too. That's one form of narcissism. But another form is I'm the worst piece of crap in the world, and I believe it, and that is my truth about me. And nobody's going to tell me I'm worthwhile, worth loving, good, because I have made up my mind about who I am and what you think of me. And that's another form of sort of self-obsession, because even though you think or we think that being mad at ourselves is a really good way of learning, it really isn't. There's not a lot there in hating yourself. Where there is growth is having feelings for others. So feeling like I'm a terrible person and no one will ever love me, that's not, I can't get a lot of growth out of that. That's called shame. But feeling like, oh, maybe I have something to offer to someone else or some way to support them or give to them, that's how we grow beyond it. So, yeah, there has to be balance in recovery. It can't just be pain and suffering. Otherwise, why get better? Tammy? I don't know.
Yeah. So my thought is, because we just talked about steps, and those are very helpful. What I am reading is I'm listening, I'm watching, and I'm reading. What I don't hear is I've written my 4-step, which on
Connecting.
my 4-step, my 4-step, like my sponsor made me put, and I had to be made to, I had to put the things that were like, what are my positives too? And even some of the things that, are my character defects, they also have, it's the way I was using them that they were a character defect. They can also be, it's the two-edged sword. They can be good, or they, can be a problem. So I would invite you to, I guess I would like to know, what are you doing? Are you doing a 4-step? Are you doing a 5th step? Because the first 9 steps, as the person just ahead, talked about, those are the cleanup, and the freedom that you get from doing those is amazing. But like Dr. Rob talked about, shame is not terribly useful, because you just kind of spiral around it. And looking at things and going, gosh, look what my addiction has done and cost me and my relationships, and being motivated to use that to not do that in the future and move forward. That's a positive.
And that is called guilt. That
Yes.
feeling of, oh, I feel badly about doing something wrong. And that feeling is meant to be there to teach me that I need to try to not do that again, in the same way that putting my hand on a hot stove hurts. Hurting someone else like that makes me feel bad. I don't want to feel bad like that anymore. I'm not going to do that again. That's the good news about guilt. But when the lesson becomes, oh, I made someone feel bad, I hate myself, I'm a piece of crap, then the lesson ends there.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Okay, next question. Dating and recovery question. How should I set boundaries around texting? In today's modern world, people send texts throughout the day, but that leads me right into unmanageability. Do people in recovery place firm limits around that? That's a great question.
Well, this goes to the heart of romance, right? Because in a perfect world, we want to get that once in a while text from our sweetheart in the middle of a day, and we want to feel like, oh, they're thinking of us. Even if us older married people want that too, don't we, Tammy? Sometimes?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But on the other hand, in a fairly new relationship where I'm trying to figure out who I am and who they are and keep boundaries, those kind of little romantic moments can send you spinning. And I think that you have to be the guide of what your boundary is. I can't tell you, nor do I think I should, well, never let this person text you, because maybe once during the week you're having a bad moment and it just makes your day wonderful. And that's what romance is all about, in a good way. On the other hand, if you're like compulsively texting each other 12 times a day throughout the day, you're probably not focusing on what you're supposed to be during the day, which is your work. So I think it has to do with what you can tolerate, combined with some really clear boundaries that are set related to that. And I think the best way to find that out is to talk to a sponsor, talk to a therapist, get someone else to reflect back to you what moments feel good to you, what moments you don't, so you can set those boundaries. Maybe you can't get a text during the workday at all. Someone else might, maybe you can't. Someone else might be okay with 3. Really, this is individual, but what I really like is that you're bringing up the question. Because again, I like to look at what's underneath questions. And part of what's underneath this question is, I want to stay sober. I don't want to screw this up. And I want to be careful as I date to not screw this up. But what can also be part of that is, and I'm afraid that if I start enjoying the excitement of dating, that I'll get really lost. And, you need to enjoy the attachment process. You just need to do it consciously with other people in your life that you can reflect the reality of what your dating situation is with, so that you can go back, like, therapists or 12-step people, or in some of the drop-in groups that we have. Tammy, do we have a drop-in group on sex and relationship healing for single people?
We don't, but that's a great idea.
I just realized, like, we have older married folks,
or betrayed partners and things like that. But I love that idea. I'm going to make note of it.
There's a lot of people who struggle with porn who are single.
Yeah.
And are struggling with dating. So maybe just think about this. We might start a group, and I know exactly who would do it. Tammy and I know some people who run workshops and do camp experiences for dating, don't we?
Yes.
and people who are trying to grow that world so that they can take people off the internet and get them to date. And I bet those would be the perfect people to do something for people who are trying to get off pixels and into people, or they're struggling with a dating process. Thank you for whoever brought us this question,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
think we'll create a space just for you. Keep coming back.
Yes. Well, and I was thinking too about, you've shared in previous webinars about having your dating posse, and I think even bringing that to your dating posse and talking, like the people that you check in with, is this a person for me to date? Is this like, I think having that and just go like, it feels like this, and they can kind of validate or say, what about this? I think, getting that outside feedback could be helpful. Okay.
Okay.
So holiday advice.
Oh, wait, someone said, I'm part of a women's group. Most of us are single, meaning women's sex addiction group, maybe on our site.
Okay.
But half are sort of porn addicts that have never dated, and the other half have been active out there. It would be a dating and recovery drop-in group would be amazing for the women. Great. So we take all these ideas and really get volunteers to try to back them up. I think that's really exciting. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And I'll have to check and think about, do we need a separate site for guys and a separate guy? I'll have to think about
and can we just talk about that for a second in front of everybody, Tammy? Because it's an interesting question, because I would love to have a mixed dating site, not dating, a mixed discussion group, male and female single people. I think that, gays and lesbians, you have to jump in there as you will, but I think it's a great exercise in men and women witnessing each other, asking questions. And I would be really up for that. I think the greater divide is in what the person said earlier, which is there are people who just look at porn and they don't know how to get to dating.
Right.
They don't even know how to get out of the house.
Yeah.
And I think that's really a porn addict sort of, getting from pixels to people group. But I think the other group, which I would have probably be gender mixed, would be dating in recovery, finding love in recovery, relationships in recovery. But we'd have to have some really good rules around it, like, no chatting outside the group.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I like this, and I think, but guys, you always know if Tammy likes an idea because she writes it down.
I did. I wrote it down, and
I know. I saw you.
Okay. All right. So holiday advice. I'm living separately from my sex addict husband. I don't know how to handle the holidays. I want to be kind to my husband during the holidays. I do recognize I have some signs on trauma bonding, and my husband can be indifferent, narcissistic. I don't want to get hurt or feed anything bad in our relationship, but I am so done with addiction sucking the joy out of so much of our rethinking just being kind. Sucking the joy out of so much, or rethinking just being kind. I don't think I have an agenda with wanting to do this. Just tired of feeling the need to examine the motives behind everything. How do you handle the holidays and addiction?
Heck if I know. And I mean that sincerely. I had a holiday party this weekend, and I'm just going to use a little personal experience. I had a holiday party this weekend for work, and I used my home to have that party. And I knew this party was coming, and so I've been working all week to get ready for it. But my spouse of 15 years, he knew the party was coming, but what he didn't realize was that he was going to have to spend the entire weekend cleaning and getting the house ready and decorating for the party on Sunday, which meant today when he went back to work, he really didn't have much of a weekend. And that wasn't really fair, because it was a work party, but it was what it was. And I noticed the entire weekend he wasn't very nice to me. He didn't want to do things. He kept saying, why do you keep asking me things that were simple, like hand me this? And I could tell throughout the weekend, and I had a feeling about this. Don't you know that I'm doing this too, and blah, blah, blah. And it didn't seem to make any difference that I was upset about his being less than willing to give. He just wanted me to understand he wasn't happy doing what he was doing. And I think that's a healthy relationship during the holidays, because today he said, oh, I could have given more. And I was like, it's okay, I did, but we got through it. So, what I would say is try to anticipate where the conflict's going to come and see if you can work around it now. So if you have a bunch of people come for the holidays and you know that no matter what you do, he's not going to do X, Y, and Z, this may not be the time of year to start thinking, gosh, I'm going to get him to do this, because he won't, or you'll be miserable. So I say spend a lot of time with the people who are happy and joyous and enjoying the holiday with you and for you. Do the cookie making with the kids, and and if he doesn't help or doesn't then he's missing out. And I realized that the contribution and the giving even if you're just getting the table ready for dinner, is part of being in the family. It's part of celebrating the holidays. And, you know, your expectations of what you might want with your partner around that may be very different than what he's available for. It doesn't mean you can't have a heck of a good holiday. But be aware of who you're spending time around, that you're getting it filled up as much as you are giving, because those of us who are trying to get through the holidays, I don't know about you, but I often get through them by cleaning and cooking and washing and preparing and buying, and I forget to actually sit down and just play cards or have some fun. And you got to do that too. So.
And I was thinking, because you say I live separately, so it feels like you're trying to navigate if, you know, if he should be, I'm going to say if he should be around for the holidays, or how do you want to find that balance? You know, and for me, sometimes I kind of visualize, you know, how am I going to feel if I don't invite him at all? How am I going to feel if I have, you know, this much? And, you know, is there something in between? And I think having the discussion, you know, even to say, you know, I would like to try this. I'm willing to do this 2 hours on Christmas Eve or whatever, you know, and just see, you know, I mean, I think whatever feels, you know, I hear that like, oh my gosh, when am I going to not have to analyze every little thing? You know, I think you know, what's going to feel more organic to you? What's going to feel good to you? And regardless of, you know, if it feels good to you without, you know, just because I feel guilty if I don't, you know, include them, you know, don't include them. You know, if you know, if you feel like I'm going to have a happy and joyous holiday, if I don't include them. So.
Make your spouse sit at the kiddie table.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
I always have
Or
fun
you
at the
go,
kiddie
even
table.
better.
I was going to say, I go sit at the kiddie table. I'm always the first one to volunteer. Okay, how does an addict who is very narcissistic learn empathy and intimacy? He states he hasn't looked at porn in 1.5 years or talked to other women behind my back. Oh.
Okay, Tammy has been exposed to 3-year-olds who were ill. I know this because I heard about her Thanksgiving. So she's now recovering from hanging around 3-year-olds and grandchildren. So please forgive her process.
You're muted. You're muted.
How long have I been muted? Forever?
Time. I think you tried to mute me. I muted me. So repeat whatever you
I
just.
didn't try to mute.
I don't know. Maybe I muted you. I don't know.
You
Entire question. So.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, exactly where I was when I started. So Tammy running off like she is right now is because she was around 3-year-olds' grandchildren during the holidays, and now she is suffering the results. She's refusing to allow herself to believe that she actually is having a result. She is in full denial that she's about to lie down and have a fever. So she's doing her best. That's what I said while you were gone. I also said that in terms of a narcissistic spouse, that all addicts are narcissistic when we are fully focused on our addiction. So if, you know, when he was looking a lot of porn and lying to you, not surprising, you weren't high on his priority list. But what I also said earlier, which you couldn't hear, was, what kind of man have you married, you know, or are you with? Does he want to be more engaged with you? Does he want to be more loving to you? Is it really about him becoming a better person? Is it really about who you expect him to be because he put down the porn? And therefore you think, well, now that someone put down the porn, they're absolutely going to show up for me in the relationship? Or is it more, he put down the porn, but he's still the same guy and has no idea how to get beyond who he is and isn't really interested. He just put down the porn. Tammy, do you want to go lie down? You look terrible.
No, just watery eyes from coughing so much. Okay. So I'm fine. I'm listening, totally listening.
I just want to make sure that you don't, not you, Tammy, that you don't over expect something from someone who's not really that motivated or focused on performing differently. Because this process of behavior change around addiction, there are many dry wells, meaning places where we can just stop the behavior, but our emotional growth stops with it. You don't want a dry well. You want someone who's not only stopped the behavior, but is more compassionate, more engaged, more loving, more, empathic. And I don't know if he can do that or not, just because he doesn't look at porn anymore. So that takes therapy, that takes reading books, that takes an active process. And most of all, you want a better spouse, more kind, more compassionate, more willing. They have to be motivated to want to be that spouse. No one here and no one on any planet can nag anyone into being a better husband or wife. No one can complain. No one can withdraw. I'm going to go in the other, you know how I know? Because I've tried. And I know a lot of people have tried it. It's not worked for any of us. Our spouses still are who they are. They just think we're a jerk. So I suggest you find your high adult self and start thinking about what you want from your partner, not just in terms of apologies or whatever, but overall. Because 1.5 years is a long time to not see change. What are you looking for, and how do you think you're going to get there?
And I was thinking, like the alcoholic that quits drinking but still has all the other behaviors. That's what this feels like. Like, okay, I stopped looking at porn, but I didn't change anything.
And that's what I meant by there are a lot of dry holes. I didn't want to use the word dry drunk, but there are a lot of dry wells in there where you got somebody to stop the porn, but they're still trying to get something out of an empty well. They haven't started looking at themselves yet.
Aren't dating profiles kind of inherently objectifying on oneself and others? We are, in fact, putting up an image of ourselves. How to reconcile not objectifying self and others with utilizing modern technology to find a partner?
Okay, so if this person's a feminist, I just want to say I want to laugh a little because we define ourselves to other people every time we walk out of the house. If I didn't want to be defined, there's no way to not be defined by, I could wear a white sheet and you would have an opinion about that. I could wear red glasses. I could let my hair grow out and have big lumps on either side of my head. Whatever it is, people are going to judge you. And so here's a different way to look at it. You can consider it a given that all human beings are curious about others, and we're going to look, and then for our own emotional safety, as we all do, we judge and categorize what group, where people belong. Are they safe? Are they not? It's just part of our process. So I would say that in the dating process, what healthy people realize is that they're going to be objectified, because just walking out the door, you're going to get objectified. So they decide, they take control over how they want to be objectified. And, many people would say, I'm going to be a little literary here. So some women would say that the whole series, Sex and the City, was really a series about women reclaiming their sexual power, that it wasn't the 1970s. They didn't need to dress in a pantsuit to avoid a man's attraction, but actually being sexual and having that be a powerful part of being a woman and owning it was good for them. And that's sort of in part what that whole thing was about, although they did spend 8 years on TV talking about men, but that's a different take. But anyway, my point is, I think you get that, if you're going to put yourself in the dating world, you are by definition putting yourself in a world where you are going to be objectified. People are going to objectify how you speak, how you look, how you act. So how do you want to influence who you invite in part will be about determining how you choose to let them objectify you. Do you want a lot of cleavage and, really show a lot of body parts because that's what you're focusing on? Or do you want to wear a beautiful color and something really sophisticated that someone might find interesting? They're still objectifying you, whether it's cleavage or beauty, it's still the same circuitry. So I would say worry less about what others are going to do and focus more on what you can do to feel comfortable within yourself to go out in the world and, come on, folks, objectify me. I'm looking forward to it.
Next question about doing Sex Addiction 101 workbook. I decided to work through that book as opposed to other things. What is the best way to do that, and how fast should I be going? At this point, I'm not making much progress on my own because I don't really have a plan or self-motivation. Is there someone or some SRH group that could help support me, work with me as I go through it?
Well, this is another idea that we should write down, which is just worth writing down, which is a sort of workbook or step-by-step or something, some kind of process where you guys can bring, I'm working on chapter 1, chapter 2, whatever, and we can have a support group for that. And I think that's a great idea. Thank you very much. But in answer to your question, I think you already know the answer, which is you're reaching to us for motivation and direction, but we're, gosh, somewhere in a server, I think. It's very important that you find real live people to sit down with. It could be online, but have a consistent relationship with, whether that's someone from a 12-step group or someone from a support group or whatever it is you need. Part of the foundation that our recovery rests on, all of it, is accountability. That we begin to realize in our recovery that we're never just accountable to ourselves. That was part of the addiction. For me to think that I can go out there and do whatever and it wouldn't affect my spouse or wouldn't affect my work, or that was not healthy. So the healing is really about inviting people into your life with whom you're having a lot healthier relationship with, or being a lot more real with, and getting your needs met with. So, and most of all, becoming accountable to, because we're always accountable to others, no matter how much we try to avoid it. So why not grow your accountability? Like, I'll meet with you next week and I'll have my chapter 1 done. And then we can meet next week and you can have your chapter 1 done. And you know what? Within 10 or 12 weeks, you've gone through the whole thing. And you've probably made a deep, enduring friend or group of people who will support you for a very long time, because you've made yourself vulnerable and intimate, hopefully among safe people, by revealing your truth. So, all of this is a good thing as long as you're not sitting alone trying to get it done by yourself. Because I can tell you that procrastination is an amazing thing. I can be absolutely certain that I'm going to go tonight and get this thing done, whatever this thing is. And then within a few hours, my desk is clean, my laundry has been done, I've cooked something, but I haven't gotten that thing done anymore because, I can always find 1,000 reasons. But if there's somebody else waiting for me to get it done, then it's different. And by the way, this is the way we start to build what will become relationship trust in intimate, loving relationships where people depend on you and you are accountable. So no, sir or ma'am, well, actually, yes, sir or ma'am, you're correctly identifying the issue, which is, in order to grow, you need to take this work and make yourself accountable to it with other people.
And I do like the idea of having a separate group for that. I also do think, though, that the current groups would welcome that opportunity. If you said, I'm going to share, and next week I'm going to come back and I'm going to share, and I'm going to give it, like a lot of the groups I know, Forest group, for guys, they have a check-in at the, a great place to be accountable. So even if we don't create a group right away, because it won't happen right away, but use the current technology that's already built in to do so. If you're a female, there's a female Sex and Love added group. Great, use it.
Tammy, would you me a favor and just type into the chat for everyone to see the link to our homepage, so that if he or she wants to look for one of those groups, they can find them. Remember, the webinar that we're doing tonight is a mirror of things that we do 8 or 10 times during the week for female partners, for male partners, for female addicts, for male addicts, for couples. We do workshops, little mini workshops for an hour, all kinds of things. And our goal is to give this away for free. So there's not a lot of places you can get the support. Come join us. And as Tammy said, if you got something you got to work through or talk about in one of those groups and it's directly related to this work, bring it. I'm sure the group would be glad to give you 15 minutes to read a section of it. And in fact, it'll probably spur a lot of healing and conversation for a whole bunch of people. So yeah, and by the way, make your name anonymous, put your finger over the screen if you don't want to be seen. Isn't that cool, Tammy? I can disappear. Wow.
You do disappear with that. So
I disappeared. Magic. It's like I dream of Genie. Can I wiggle? Well, no, that was Bewitched. No. If I wiggle my nose. Anyway, sorry.
Okay.
I'm dating myself.
Next question. I discovered the betrayal with his ex-wife, and he doesn't do anything about recovery. He wanted to just start over again, but he ghosts on me every time. So I put boundaries and told him I will not do this anymore. I will not wait for you anymore. And I haven't heard from him since, and I'm worried about him, but I cannot humiliate myself anymore. Did I do the right thing?
Okay. Speaking of accountability, when we end relationships and we know it was the right thing to do, and sweetheart, you know that was the right thing to do. I can just tell. The hardest part is when we have the feelings that leave us feeling lonely and sad, and then we start to think about them, and then we romanticize the relationship, and then we only think about the good parts, and then we're thinking, gee, maybe I should call them. Or if we're a caregiver, we think, oh, maybe they're not doing well, maybe they need us, maybe they're missing, as if they wouldn't call us if they needed something or anything. So I'm going to say two things about that. Number one, please don't contact this person, because it's not going to be helpful to you. If you want to write a letter and don't send it. If you want to talk about something related to him, talk to one of your friends. You already know the answer to this. You already know the lesson. The thing that you're facing is the grief. When we come up against that terrifying loneliness that we'll never find another person, or we're always going to be alone, or this was the right person, if only we'd done this or that. I know what that's like. And it's very easy to convince ourselves that we were better off where we were than where we're heading. And that's not necessarily true. It's a really big piece for someone like you to get people to wrap themselves around you. Other supportive women or men who will not be sexual with you, but will care about you, because breaking up is hard to do. There's a reason they wrote songs about this. And for those of us who tend to sometimes choose the wrong person or get into really conflictual relationships, breaking up is especially hard to do. And it's something I think that we need as much help with, if not more, than we need with dating. And, maybe someday we'll get a breakup group going. But yeah, you have to be accountable to your decision to be out of the relationship. And it can't change because you are in a different emotional place yesterday than you were last week, because then you're like an addict who's chasing something that they can't have. And they knew it wasn't good for them last time, but they're going back again anyway. That's what creates an addictive relationship, is going back for something you already know won't give you anything, but you can't stop yourself from doing it. You are asking yourself the question, can I stop myself from doing it? Yes, you can. You've just made yourself accountable to all of us. I'm going to assume you're not going to reach out to that guy. I am going to assume you're going to drop in one of our partner support groups or something and make sure you're not alone. Remember, everybody, this is the holidays. I know I had a party yesterday. I was screaming at my spouse half the morning getting ready. Actually, it was more contained growling than I would say it was screaming. But nonetheless, this is a hard time of year, especially for being single, especially for breaking up, especially for having family issues. It puts a magnifying lens on everything. I don't know about you, but when I go to the store and I see something nice, one of the first things I always think about is what would be good for my spouse? Is that something he or she would like? And I can only imagine, if you're really pissed or feeling betrayed, that you think, oh, that's a nice shirt for him or her. I would never buy it for them if they died. That's a very different way to experience Christmas. So, and if you're an addict, it's like, this was the time where we had extra time. We could run to a store and act out. We could do something behind someone's back. We had free time, and we could also suffer guiltily through the holidays. We all need a lot of support during this time of year. I expect that everybody's going to be really struggling, including Tammy with the flu. So, take care of yourself and give yourself a little bit of extra credit that this is going to be a hard time of year for everyone. And therefore, whatever you're feeling or expressing is going to be heightened because of that. And they're impeaching the president. Okay. So there's all this political stuff going on top of all of that, which everybody's watching the news and worrying. So this is a hard time of year. There's political issues. There's religious, spiritual, there's family. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of tension. I see people running around with their fists clenched. So take care of yourself and try to be more gentle. It's a hard time for everyone right now.
So I'm really glad you're here. And I think Dr. Rob, when he talked about romanticizing, it's really easy to focus on these were the good parts. And I hear you being worried about him, but he's all grown up. He's making his decision. So I love that you're here. I will hold that you won't reach out to him, keep reaching out to us. The betrayed partner group last night, I was privileged to be able to, sub in on that. There's lots of opportunities throughout the week. We've got another one Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific time. Join those, join the webinars. There's bunches of stuff. I put the link in, keep coming back to us and we'll affirm you. Okay. So next question, Dr. Rob. Our son is 23 and our daughter is 17. They have assumed lots of things about their father's behavior, but he has recently disclosed it all too much. Their father was admitted he did this to their biological mother and to me, their stepmother. We have had the conversation, but I am wondering what else is there to understand how to best support them. It seems like there are so few resources for kids. Right now, I'm living separately from their father. I'm concerned about them and the kids shut down.
Well, I think that's painful. Painful for you, painful for Tammy, clearly. Painful for you because, you just want to do the best by your kids. And it sounds like you didn't want this to come out. And personally, I always prefer that kids not hear any detail of their parents' sexual life, that we are struggling, that we are fighting, that we are not sure we're going to remain together, whatever it is, and always that it's not your fault and we love you, but never, dad did this or mom did that. And the reason I discourage that is because it creates a loyalty issue for children that they have to struggle with. Did dad hurt mom? Should I be mad at dad? Well, what did mom do? Should I protect mom? Whatever, all of that. And then it affects it's just an awful situation. And so I highly discourage it. And these are awkward ages. These aren't children. You use them the age children. These are young adults. And it's not a great age to find out that your parents are falling apart. Because on some level, those kids really still need that stability into their 20s. So I'm mostly worried about the 17-year-old who's going to say, I'm fine, screw you, everything's fine, I'm fine, or whatever, or I love you. But they're not fine, and they need support. And, I might, with a 17-year-old, go to a couple of family therapy sessions and make it about you. Like, I've been it's hard to be alone, and I wonder if that's effective. And so I really want to, but that, create a space for your 17-year-old to join you with some kind of professional support. That's what I would do. And then with a 23-year-old, if they're around, I might invite them to the same thing. Family therapy can be a bunch of ages. But I think for you to support them in whatever way you can to help them work through their anger and their hurt, and help them mostly to understand that your anger and your hurt and your disappointment is not theirs. And they can still love their father or not love their father, or love, that this is not on them. And it affects them, but they are not responsible for it. They're not responsible to be mad at dad for you, and they're not responsible to make it easier on him because they don't really feel it was that bad. And none of this is their job. But it is your job, your mom, it's still your job to support them, and this will shake their world, and I would be ready with a net.
Well, it's challenging. This is stepmom reaching out, and and he admitted that he did this to their biological mom. So it's really complicated.
I'd probably call her.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have any relationship with her, I'd be calling her too, because it's her kids, and it's also your kids on some level. And why not share the concern for them? If there's any way the two of you can work that out, I would. We all know who the jerk is in this situation, so. Why not bond with that other partner? You'll probably find someone who really wants to make sure her kids are okay also.
Okay, so next question. Hi, Dr. Rob and Tammy. So grateful for all the sex and relationship healing website has to help the many of us sex addicts and the intimacy disorders that typically accompany the addiction. I've been in recovery for several months and following Patrick Kern's Recovery Start program. I've promised my wife to be 100% transparent. However, I do feel the content of my calls to connect with group members should remain private. I will tell her that I'm reaching out. Your thoughts?
Well, I've said this many times, and I'm glad to say it to you here. I think that what we absolutely must share to our spouse, first of all, bottom line, is if we have a slip, if we have to restart our time, if we've had sex with another person or crossed some boundary that clearly they would be upset about if they knew. It's very obvious, and some kind of contact or sexual experience was involved. But I don't think it's a great idea at the sort of other end of the spectrum. Every time you find someone attractive, or if you found yourself in a situation that was uncomfortable, or that you call and report to your spouse like they are your parole officer or your sponsor. Your partner needs to be your wife, your husband, your lover, your friend. And it's not going to be the thing that reassures them ultimately if you go back to them with every little thing that happens, even though they will tell you, I want to know every little thing that happens. This is part of the boundaries that we as addicts have to set. And the way that we earn the trust to set it is that our spouses see that we are going to groups and that we have people to talk to, that we're going to therapy and we have people we're working with. So when we say, I have a place to take it and I'm working on this, and and I know you're worried about me and you have reason to be, but I'll let you know if there's a problem, that they know that we're actually doing that. And that's sort of where the reassurance comes from in the beginning. So the other part I was going to say about this is, yeah, 100% transparency does not mean every single detail of everything you're going through. And if it turns into that, you're not going to like it. It's not healthy for her. But if you have some kind of sexual or romantic experience that would define the strife between you, she better know about it and you better tell her.
Okay. Next
one
question.
More thing. I'm sorry, Tammy.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Another thing that we often say is it isn't necessary that everyone knows everything about us, but someone needs to know everything about us. So, it may not be your spouse and probably shouldn't be that you talk about every little thing with, because it would drive them insane. But you do need someone around or some people around to get that stuff out with. I'm not saying that you obsess over someone at work and then you don't tell your wife and you let it go. I'm saying you obsess about someone at work and then you tell the community of support and get support from them. And then you can say to your spouse, yeah, I had a few issues today, but no big deal. I talked to my group. End of story.
So the next one, I'm in therapy for sex addiction and have a lot of trouble being open, honest, vulnerable with my therapist. I come into therapy and I get flooded and freeze. The therapist is a specialist in the field and the only one in my area.
Okay, well, a couple of things. I absolutely would make sure he or she knows this. I think it's really important to tell them. I don't think it's unusual at all, because when you go into therapy, a lot of feelings come up from the past, from the present. It can be pretty overwhelming. If it were me, I'm thinking of a few kind of tricky clinical therapy ideas. Like, I would bring a notebook with me. So if there was a thought about something I wanted to say, I would write it down. Maybe before the end of the session or every 20 minutes in the session, we could stop and see things I'd written down. So maybe if I can't get it out in the moment, at least I've gotten it on paper and I might come back to it later, or maybe I can just hand it to him or her later and they can read it. So if I'm too embarrassed to read it. I've had therapists hand me things to write stuff down on. I've had, therapists say, like, show me a warning sign when you're struggling and we'll stop and let's see what you're struggling with. I've also had agreements with clients that, if you don't tell me something that you think is important right now, I want you to call and leave me a message within 24 or 48 hours as to what it was. So that the information, even though we kind of are so fearful we can't get it out in the moment, at least we get it to them before we see them again. So I think all of those things are useful, but there's something more here. I mean, for you, that kind of panicky, overwhelming feeling is not just about therapy, it's about your history. And it's your history of dealing with male authority figures, there's stuff that comes up in therapy right away. Sometimes for some people that's emotional, even though we go in thinking, I want to work on this. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, I have all these feelings about that. You need to talk about that and deal with that and make sure that the two of you are working on that together. Because if it's in the room, it's going to affect the work. And now we're going to do the last question before Tammy lies down on the floor of her office and goes into a small fever.
I don't have a fever. It's just a tickle.
You're so flushed. It looks great.
I know. It's because I've got my sleeves rolled up. Yeah, I am. So yes.
And you're wearing red, of course. Which
I know. I noticed that, and I don't have a lovely sunset behind you. Anyway, so I refuse to get sick. So I'm not going to get sick. So anyway, so my spouse and I are about 6 weeks post discovery. We have been talking a lot for many hours at a time. We have had some great conversations and have connected more in the last month than we have in our entire relationship. Our biggest problem, we think, is that when she starts to get very emotional and intense from the trauma I've caused, that I can't handle it. I get defensive and angry, and I argue with her feelings because they don't match my reality or my feelings. How can I get past this and help her heal and feel validated instead of reliving the trauma over and over again?
Well, this is something I would suggest you write down. It's a little therapy technique. We call it a time out. And that means when And let me tell you what a timeout is. And you can look it up online too, a therapeutic timeout. It means that something's gotten kind of hot or difficult between us, and one of us has just had enough for that moment. We're going to yell, we're going to get upset, we're going to shut down, whatever it is. And we say, hey, I need a timeout. And I'll tell you, this is something you've practiced when you're not fighting. So it's something you've agreed upon before. One of you, either one of you can say, I need a timeout. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to take the dog. And you say what you're going to do. And you say that when you'll be back, which should be probably somewhere within an hour. It doesn't mean you're leaving them. It doesn't mean you're abandoning this. It just means you're waiting for things to cool off a little bit. And then you do that. Then you take that time and you come back in 60 minutes or whatever it is, and you say, okay, I've had a little time out and I'm ready to take this on. And then you guys try again. It is a therapeutic technique. It's something we use in therapy all the time. How does this go wrong? Timeouts go wrong when you practice it. But then when you're actually doing it, your spouse says, you're not going anywhere, and stands in front of you. Bad idea. That's how people get hit. Bad idea. That wasn't a joke, by the way. I meant that, Tammy. That's how people get hit, is you're not going anywhere. You know, that's not a good place to be. If your spouse wants to leave, let them out the door. They're trying to take care of themselves and you. But before it gets to that, or even, you know, the best thing to do is to practice on a Sunday when you're in a good mood. Okay, so let's pretend we're fighting. Okay, one of us wants a timeout. Let's say where we're going to go and practice it, because when you're in that moment, you need to respect the give me a little time that the other person is putting up, because that may mean the difference between you're working through something and then, or saying and doing things you're really going to regret later. So look up therapeutic timeouts. They're done. They're real well researched, and they work. Tammy, thank you.
Well, wait. I have a tag on for this. It's very early, and I'm curious about what you're talking about. You're talking a lot, and if it's just talking about, you know, no, I'm answering this question. Yeah, so if you're just talking about the betrayal and the trauma and all of that, and you're not talking about, you know, what's going on in the rest of your lives and things like that, you know, then it tends to be kind of a swirly of the not good stuff. And we talk about, and we talked a little bit about a little bit ago too, you need outside support. So getting outside support, like the drop-in groups are great, you know, where you're each getting support, you know, from other people to help you, because we've talked many times in previous webinars, Dr. Rob, about, you know, you can't be the only support for each other. You don't have the infrastructure to be able to do that. So I'm just tagging on that. And thank you. We did have a 3-year-old grandson who got sick while we were in Minnesota, and he got really sick, and I'm going like, I'm not going to do it. I keep running and keeping my lungs clear, so I'm just going to not do it. So, but thank you all. And I will be back on tomorrow. No, Rock and Relationships moved to Tuesdays, and actually Scott is going to take that one for me tomorrow. So, but John Taylor has Rock and Relationships tomorrow, but lots of drop-in groups. I put in the chat, I put the link, go find anything that will be supportive for you.
And I do want to quickly say to you guys that one of the reasons Tammy is also sick is we've been running her ragged, because our treatment program, Seeking Integrity, has started to get really busy. And we're now in a stage where we have a large enough group, I think, to do the work in a really wonderful way. And so Tammy's been taking all these calls from people. Do you want to seek treatment? Or are you trying to get into treatment? All this stuff. And we often get people during the holidays or in the early January who want to come to treatment, because it's just sort of a vacation-y kind of time where they can take 2 or 3 weeks off. So thanks, Tammy, for not only doing your usual, but handling all the holiday calls, because I know a lot of people are seeking help this time of year. And
if they want qualified help, there is not a better program than
okay, thank you, Tam. I appreciate that. So. Well, we also refer to other people and all that, but I just wanted to qualify that you are tired for good reasons. And guys, we'll see you in a week. Take good care. Bye for now.